Right now, it is time for us to be joined by our good friend, and that is Arthur Schwartz, the food maven. Good morning, Arthur.
Good morning, and I live, I think, on a desert island. There is no activity out there at all. It's a sea of nothingness, and I'm fortunate to have a full refrigerator and pantry, and my life has become a combination of what to cook when you think there's nothing in the house to eat, and cooking in a small kitchen, almost literally, in the sense that I've actually been using some of the recipes from those first two cookbooks of mine. But I don't know. How is it up there?
Well, of course, the president finally came to reality, and he's extended the social ban for another 30 days. So that means through the end of April, we're going to be, at least through the end of April, living like we are now then. Up here, it's interesting. Stores are adapting. The grocery stores, like Le Bon's in Salisbury, has really evolved now, and they've got a great way to get people in and out safely. They only allow 20 people in the store at a time. Mm-hmm. They have a guard at the front door that counts when people go in and count when people come out. They've got specific markings on the floor by the checkout counters.
You know what? This is the same in my supermarket.
Yeah. Do they have the big, and they put a big plastic thing up in front of, in between people checking out and the tellers, a big clear plastic panel, so the tellers are protected that way.
I'm not sure that they've gone that far yet at mine, but we have a young man at the front of the store who I call Sam the Union Market Man, because it's the Union Market. Yeah. And Bob calls him the bouncer.
That's right.
But he's this big fellow. And when you walk in the store, if you're allowed into the store, because he's counting how many are in and out, he gives you all the rules, and in a very sweet way. And he's on a loop. So he's become a good actor at it. And he wipes down the handles of carts. And they've closed extra hours a day to clean up. You know what? Even with all this, I'm trying not to go to the supermarket for at least another week.
You're smart.
I think we should reduce our number of visits to anywhere, unless it's you got to get drugs at the pharmacy, which I will at the end of this week. But anyway, everybody's cooking. In my Facebook feed, all I see is cooking, stress cooking. I don't know what else to call it. I'm cooking for survival here, but I did discover there is a pizzeria in my neighborhood that's still delivering. But I can do this, and I am reasonably well stocked with everything except, which really, this week was thinking of my friend Paula Wolford saying so many years ago that she learned from the Moroccan women that she lived with when she was young what to keep in the house. So you just went out for a couple of vegetables and pieces of fruit, and you could fill up one of those French net shopping bags with everything you needed for a feast for five, because everything else was in the pantry. So I'm going to try to use up a lot of my pantry stuff. For instance, I have an overabundance of cornmeal, both straight cornmeal, with which I'm looking forward to baking a cornbread. I have not been baking very much because I shouldn't be eating sweets, and Bob and I cannot be trusted with a whole cake in the house. It'll disappear way too quickly. But I did succumb to a recipe that was in the Times last week, and which looked very familiar, and of course it is. It wasn't labeled as such, but it's what I used to call Wacky Cake. And Wacky Cake is a very, very frugal cake that was popular during the Depression, and during the war too, probably because there were eggs and baking things that were rationed. So, but it's also wacky. It's wacky on several counts, I should say. It's wacky because it has no eggs and no milk, so that allowed the writer in the Times to label it vegan, which it is. The only shortening is some vegetable oil. And I said, this has got to be Wacky Cake. And I'm not going to even tell you the recipe here on the air because in the end, I didn't like it very much. One of the wacky parts is that you mix the whole cake in the pan that it is baked in. Do you ever see this cake, Marshall?
No.
Well, yeah. So you mix flour and bake and cocoa, a lot of cocoa, and sugar in your pan, and baking soda or powder. I'm not remembering. Baking soda, unquestionably baking soda, and then the wet ingredients are just oil and water. So you mix up your dry ingredients, and a little salt also, and you mix them up in the pan. You add water, vinegar, which along with the baking soda is your leavening, some vanilla, and that's it. And you mix those wet ingredients into the dry ingredients. In the old days, I remember this cake and it was a gimmick, because it's not necessary to do this. They would tell you to mix the dry ingredients in the pan. By the way, I made this as proposed in the New York Times in an 8-inch square baking pan. Pyrex baking dish. And in the old days, they would say, do the dry ingredients and make 3 holes, like little wells, in the dry ingredients. And into one you put the vinegar, into another one you put the oil, and another one you put the water, and then somewhere there you put in a little vanilla extract, and then you mix it all together. Well, you don't need to make the little wells. You just add the ingredients. I'm sure you can find this on the Internet, this wacky chocolate, many versions of it, in fact, on the Internet. So in the end, it's not a very good cake. And it was a waste of quite a lot of cocoa, I thought. It's spongy and sort of rubbery. I don't know. It's not a good texture at all. The flavor was okay, made with Hershey's cocoa. I could have done better, so I'm glad I only wasted... Well, I didn't waste it because we ended up eating it, even though it wasn't all that good. In fact, the second day, it was sitting on the counter here. You know that it couldn't have been very good, because if it was, it would have disappeared in a day. It was sitting here on the counter, and Bob says, well, we should eat it. So what I thought of is I had a little bit of heavy cream in the refrigerator. I thought, well, if I soak it in heavy cream, it'll be more like a pudding than a cake, and I won't mind this texture. And sure enough, that worked. And we still had a square of the cake left the next day, and that we had with a smidge, literally a smidge of vanilla ice cream that we had in the refrigerator. Now we're all out of sweets. The thought today is maybe I should indeed make something, but that's not on my list. And I have so much food in the house that I have to cook. And what I'm looking forward to making, besides cornbread, to use up some of all my cornmeal, is I have been into matzo balls, and since Passover is coming up, I didn't realize that we weren't going to be able to have a Seder this year. I don't know. Maybe we did a virtual birthday party for my 4-year-old niece on Skype. Brian set up the computer so that it looked like Bob and I were sitting at the table with Maya, and we made believe we were blowing out the candles. But of course, she's the kid who I can do it myself, so she did it herself, and that was fun. So I don't know. I'm thinking maybe we should do the Seder that way. Everybody's looking for ways to socialize without, being with each other. I have friends who've done cocktail parties online. Somebody had a coffee clutch yesterday. I don't know how many people turned up, but that I thought was a good idea, although at the time of day they were. I don't know why they weren't doing alcohol. In any case, I have the makings for macaroni and cheese, so I'm looking forward to making that. I bought a bunch of sage when I went to the supermarket the other day. Herbs are if you, in the northwest corner even, sage winter's over. So if you have any sage in the garden, now's a good time to use it, actually. I find that the leaves that have survived the winter often have a lot of flavor. So I would just make sage butter, put it on some pasta. I bought, before all the virus descended on us, I bought some fresh pasta that comes in a vacuum. Well, they're not really vacuum, but they're airtight. I don't know. They're good bags, plastic bags. It comes from the Cilento in Italy, in the south, where I spend all my time. And unbelievably, we only need a half a pound for the two of us, and even that's a lot. So I put some in a plastic container, and it survived 2 weeks in the refrigerator. So I actually have still a bag unopened that looks fine, and I'm looking forward to sage butter with that pasta. I do have chicken thighs. So so this was interesting. My expensive, I keep calling it the fancy supermarket around the corner, Union Market. Everybody, the prices are so high. I was examining my receipt the other day, and I realized I wasn't really paying more for most things than I was paying in the supermarket that I feel like I'm taking my life in my hands going in there. Although I'm sure by now they've changed their policies, but it was a disturbing experience last time I was there, so I'm not going back. So, and in fact, I bought these, D'Artagnan, which is a brand. It's a company that started out by making foie gras, but now makes all kinds of poultry and meat products, including they sell very, very fine chickens. And usually I'm paying a premium for them at the regular supermarket. They were $3.99 a pound, chicken thighs, a D'Artagnan at the market. And the other thing was, people, I don't know what are they out of in Sharon other than toilet paper?
Well, there's toilet paper, and then there's like chicken. It goes very quickly.
That's why I bought the chicken at Union Market, because they were very well stocked with unlike the regular supermarket, which was totally out of chicken.
And soups, a lot of soups, even canned soups.
Yeah.
Canned soups, vegetables have got to be updated quite a bit.
We have no trouble with the vegetables, but there are no frozen vegetables. And I really lately have been keeping frozen peas and frozen spinach in the house, and I'm down to one box of frozen spinach, and they had no frozen vegetables even at Fancy Union Market. Although I'm sure they're restocking, but I'm not going down there frequently enough to know when they restock. But what I did buy, which I bought a couple things that I've never bought before, just because here I am, and there are days I really don't want to cook. But I'm well stocked with chicken soup in the freezer, and I bought, just because I think I started on this a few minutes ago. Passover is coming up, one. And two, my sister has, in the last few years, been making matzo balls. She's the matzo ball cook in the family. She's been making her matzo balls with the Schwartz matzo ball mix. And, they're terrific matzo balls. And I am not great at matzo balls. I'm not sure why. There's some kind of vibe from my body or something. I don't know what it is, but I'm not 100% successful making matzo balls, no matter what the recipe. So I bought a box of this, and you know what? They were so good, and of course, in homemade chicken soup, that I bought another box, and I'm looking forward to making that. And I'm serving it the way the old delis used to, chicken soup with matzo balls and fine egg noodles.
Now, that's exactly right. I keep telling people, you go to a place and you get matzo ball soup, and it's like chicken noodle soup. No. It's got to be the fine chicken noodles. That's it, and not a ton of them. Not a ton of them. It can't be a ton of them.
I would argue that point.
Now, what's the brand name?
Not a ton of them. No, it's not a bowl of pasta in brodo. It's brodo con pasta. I don't know how you'd say gnocco di gnocchi. How do you say matzah in Italian? Is asimo, panasimo.
Okay, now what's the name of the brand that you bought in the box? Do you remember the name?
Schwartz. But you got to be careful. By the way, there is a Manischewitz, I'm sure. Too. I'm sure there are other brands, but you got to be careful. Some of these boxes contain powdered chicken soup.
Yeah.
and it'll say matzo ball mix and something, and broth and soup. I don't know, and soup they probably say, but
it's bouillon.
It's bouillon.
Yeah, and now you know what I did? I used to buy those boxes. I took the side of the box, I saw what their ingredients were, and I threw out all the things I didn't like that I saw on it, like all this blah, 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 and I stuck with the regular spices that they had on there, and I make my own matzo balls basically from their recipe.
Yeah, well, I've followed a million recipes in my life, but as I said, there's some kind of vibe, or I don't know what it is, but I can do the mix.
But that mix is the best
And
mix
on a day
out
where
there.
I really don't want to cook, I can defrost and bring a quart of soup to the simmer and make my matzo balls. It's not really a lot of work, and I'm happy. And also, the matzo ball mix makes, depending on how big you make them, 8 to 10 matzo balls. And leftover matzo balls are a good thing. Not only do they reheat well, but this is something my grandmother would do with leftover matzo balls. I haven't done it in years. Is saute a lot of chopped onions, and then reheat the matzo balls in either halves or maybe 3 slices in the chopped onions.
I've taken matzo balls. I haven't done this recently, and I've. This is going to be crazy. It sounds crazy. I've tried to deep fry them.
Oh, I think that would be good. No,
well, no, mine they fall apart. They don't.
They fall apart.
Yeah, they fall apart. But I figured.
Well,
deep
maybe
fried,
you have to bread them to fry them.
Yeah, deep fried matzo balls.
The other night I made a very indulgent thing for us. Pork chops Milanese. I had these 2 gorgeous pork chops. I have to call them T-bone pork chops. They were, you had like the loin on one side and a piece of tenderloin on the other. But these had very small bone. So I was able to pound out the meat, and then I breaded it and fried it. And I'd forgotten how much I enjoy frying. It's a very focusing, almost mesmerizing way to cook, because you're dealing with hot oil and timing, and you've got to watch it all the time, and it's sort of a miraculous thing. So I do flour, the classic, flour, egg, breadcrumbs. I really press the breadcrumbs, my own breadcrumbs, by the way. I always am very well stocked with breadcrumbs. It's mainly because we can't eat a whole baguette, so while it's still fresh. So I will often just let the other half dry out and make breadcrumbs. So anyway, and then a nice amount of oil. It doesn't have to. It's not deep frying. An eighth of an inch, a quarter of an inch of oil in my big skillet, and 3 minutes on the first side. They'll be nicely browned by then. And usually, depending on how thick or thin your piece of meat is, and as I said, I pounded mine out a little bit, not a whole lot. Wasn't giving that much, so I gave up. 2 minutes on the other side, and that's it. And you're cooked in 5 minutes. Of course, you've got to adjust your heat so that the meat starts frying as soon as it hits the pan, but not too ferociously. And the way I judge this is I take the tip of the handle of a wooden spoon and I put it in the oil. I start the oil over medium-high heat, and usually, and when bubbles form around that piece of wood, you know that it's hot enough. And you should put the handle both in the middle and on the edge and see what the difference is. But usually there's not much of a difference. Depends on the pan. Anyway, you put the chop in, and that will bring the temperature down immediately. But you keep it, frying at a good fry rate, and you may want to adjust the heat down, probably not up. And that's it. I use a very heavy aluminum pan that does in fact have a no-stick interior surface, and a cheap pan, gotta say, enameled on the outside, and big enough for 2 big pork chops. That was very indulgent.
You know, Jill years ago got me hooked on. She bought me one piece of Le Creuset. I now have like 9 pieces, and that's the only cookware. That's the only cookware I use. It's amazing.
So I never cook in a Le Creuset. I have lots of casseroles in all sizes, but I never have. And I also got to say, my 6-inch square baking dish is a Le Creuset. That's a modern Le Creuset. Anyway, I've never cooked in the skillets. What are they lined? Are they lined with cast iron? Or
I've got one that's that's the highest grade stainless steel. Okay, and then I have 2 other ones that are smaller. They go down in size. They are lined with a no stick. But it's not the Teflon stuff. It's that black interior that I see in the pictures.
Yeah,
and all the cookware works perfectly, cleans up unbelievably well. And the only thing is I had to readjust because I used to use a pressure cooker a lot. You have to readjust, and to cook things right, you keep low heat with these things, and they are amazing. It's amazing.
So they're good conductors.
Oh, amazing! It's you can put you bring something to
a
boil.
Maybe I'll treat myself one day.
You bring.
I almost treated myself to a piece of Le Creuset that was on sale, and I said, you don't need this. And then where will you put it?
Well, that's the whole thing. It's heavy. It's a pain in the ass when you're moving stuff around.
Well, all my stuff is heavy, so that's not even an issue anymore. But Bob always complains, this is so heavy. I said, well, then don't handle it.
That's right.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you. And in fact, this morning I was just thinking about this. One of the reasons I wanted to make the Wacky Chocolate Cake was because I have a tool that was perfect for mixing this cake, and I love using this tool, and it's called a Swedish whisk. It's a flat whisk. It's a coil of metal in like a horseshoe shape, and it's on a handle, and it's good for whisking things that are like just a few scrambled eggs, which I use it for all the time because I like using this thing. But I thought, this is a good use for it. If you're mixing a cake in a shallow pan, this is perfect. And it made me think about my father and his tools. Because my father, who was an auto mechanic, had a lot of pride in his tools, not in just the way he handled them, but I realize now, late in my life, and I'm older than my father was when he passed away, that I've sort of inherited his fondness for tools. Now, I'm not a woodworker, although I've considered it. I tried knitting. Those tools didn't really do it for me. I've done gardening tools. I was very into that for a good decade. And now I just have my cooking tools, and I really enjoy using them. So it's a message to people. If you don't enjoy using your cooking tools and you cook a lot, you should go treat yourself.
It's funny. It took me I have a big 6-quart, very, very nice French pressure cooker. Okay, I've had it for probably 20 years.
And I say, ooh la la.
But all I use it for now is a big pot. I don't pressure cook anything anymore since I've gotten used to using this cookware, and it's just terrific. That's all I can say. I mean, there are other knockoffs out there that are just like it, but I don't. I guess because that's the way the world runs. But I just like the way it cleans up. I like the way it cooks, and the even heat distribution. It's amazing.
Well, beyond the utility of cookware and our fondness for the cookware because of its utility and maybe beauty. I also have sentimental attachments to certain pieces of cookware. For instance, I mentioned that I have a Le Creuset 8-inch square baking dish. I've never seen this dish anywhere. It probably exists, though. And a woman in my building who I was very fond of passed away. She was a very courageous woman, by the way. And I don't think she had any heirs. I don't know who inherited the apartment, but her personal possessions were put downstairs on the swap table in our basement, which is where people who are discarding things that are nice but they don't need or want anymore put things, and they also pick up things. So that's why we call it swap table. And one of my neighbors said, "Oh, Arthur, you should go down because Roseanne's stuff, all her copper, is on the table downstairs, and I know you like copper." And by the time I got downstairs, all but one piece of copper was gone. And the one piece I have, it's an enormous, unlined copper bowl. And the other piece is this 8-inch square Le Creuset pan. So every time I use that, and I use it a lot for a lot of different things, including I make a lot of baked apples, and it's my 4 big apple pan. I think of Roseanne. This is the cuteness. So one day Roseanne says to me, I spell my name just the way your friend Roseanne spells her name. And that's a very unusual way, by the way. It's Rozeanne. And when I get this copper bowl, by the way, the reason nobody took it from the swap table is because it was so black, unclean and unpolished, that I don't think anybody recognized it as a copper bowl, as an impressive copper bowl. So I cleaned it up, and right by the handle is Roseanne's name engraved into the copper, and it's Rose, new word, ANN. So,
all right,
touches me that she wanted to be spelled the same way as my dear friend Roseanne.
That's cool. That's a nice story. All right. Well, I want you to stay safe.
All right. Well, I'm going to be cooking all week. I don't know what you're doing. I can't leave the house.
I've been making soups and stews, and I just have been going crazy.
Well, I'm only cooking with what I have, and I really did want to make this sweet and sour cabbage soup, but now I realize I don't have any meat to make it with, so I'm going to make one of my favorite things actually today, since I have this cabbage with pancetta. A little hot pepper, and potatoes.
Oh, when that cooks down, it's marvelous.
It will.
Yeah. It's marvelous.
Everybody, stay healthy.
All right, Arthur, take care. Arthur Schwartz, the Food Maven, here on Robin Hood Radio. And if you missed the show, it's online almost immediately at robinhoodradio.com. Click on demand. Click on Arthur Schwartz, the Food Maven.